Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Seth Gozo here. Today you're going to watch Mr. William Lieberman of Zolla Lieberman Gallery from Chicago. He's going to present his ceramic works of 4 decades. Here it is. We're so lucky to have him as a guest in Chicago Ceramic Center.
So I still had this technique of using this. I would sit for hours and ground down the spring. And the softer the clay was, the more grok I put into it, the more interesting it was. So I went to an NCECA conference and somebody talked about taking a nylon stocking and stuffing it full of sawdust and making a form. So I started wrapping these slabs around this nylon stuff with sawdust. Does everybody understand that? The pattern? Now I was also working part-time for a ceramic gallery, Exhibit A. So I had a Alice Westfall.
That was on the dumpster?
Yes.
So is this scrap food as well?
That is smoked. Then I started putting these forms together. So I would take and make these interesting forms, and I put them together.
What's the scale?
That's about 3 feet tall, give or take. But you can see how I took the nylon stockings, made a form, and then wrapped the clay around them. Again, this form, look where it took me. Does everybody like this? Am I explaining this clear enough?
Yeah. So, William, when you were firing them, did those stockings with the sawdust, did you fire them?
No, I pulled them out.
Oh. Can you also mention what was going on in the contemporary ceramic world and art world in those years?
Yes.
So that everybody gets an idea
Yeah.
of that?
So I was still a pup, and I was learning to advance my. This was about 1980. So I was working part-time at Exhibit A on Central Street, part-time for my mother at the gallery, and working at Northeastern Illinois University. Now let me tell you about Northeastern. I knew Dennis Mitchell, and he was the instructor there, and he gave me a key, and I would sneak in to this university at night, and I'd close all the shades and brought my refrigerator. I kept sandwiches. I'd worked all the time. Is everybody laughing?
Typical art.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jane and I did the same thing at the Art Institute, but it wasn't sandwiches.
No sandwiches?
Whiskey.
No, I wasn't drinking. I wasn't. Okay, so this is big. This is about 6 feet tall. Can you see? I just kept making these forms. I was following Vocus and all these,
Shoulder.
all of them. I was needing to, go ahead.
Wave at the camera.
Okay, so I started making these 3-dimensional forms. So I was studying the interior of the body. I was obsessed with, and Dennis Mitchell forced me, I would have to write these statements about my work, which was a little bit more than I was good at, but I did. And he helped me with my ideas. This is about 24 inches, but it's inside. It was really fascinating.
So is that like an iron oxide wash?
Yes. Yeah. Okay, this is about 3 feet tall. And you can see the patterns. And I was making these big forms, and I was comfortable with it. I was still modeling, working part-time for my mother at the gallery. the lid up there? Not really. But I wish I still had these forms. Okay, this is an interesting surface. This was shoe polish. I took shoe polish and I rubbed it onto this. Probably fired to cone 1. And a little bit less, just so it would affect it. Does anybody have questions about these forms? I was using my torso, so I got a friend of mine who wanted to do me a favor because I helped him with something. So he let me cast his body with plaster. He played football for Northwestern. He was a big man, so I needed a big form, and that's how I used his body and took slabs. It was good.
You know, William, were you familiar with these artwork that they're done?
Of course.
They kind of, I can see a little artwork in there.
Good. And I would go to Ruth. She broke her wrist one year, and my mother and I brought her lunch, and we hung out there. Too bad I didn't buy some of the pieces. Okay. Okay. Then, this is one of my favorite pieces. I was a student at large at the Art Institute, and this is about 3 feet tall. I still have this piece. So I took that nylon stocking, made a big one, and then spent like 30 hours. Do you have an extruder here?
Mm-hmm.
I used this extruder and made those tubes, and I was having some physical problems from being around so much clay dust. I started to get a little bit of breathing problems, so I mimicked my torso, and then I misfired this, and then I snuck into the Art Institute one night, built a little kiln out of bricks, put sawdust all around this, lit the sawdust, and then about 6 hours later, before the school opened up, about 7 o'clock in the morning, I got this and brought it home. Now I still have this piece. So this was exhibited, and there used to be a show called a Chicago Ceramic Vicinity Show. So I was in that show 3 years. Okay, now but my favorite piece I ever made is the next one. Okay, this is about 4 feet, about 3 feet tall. And unfortunately, I was traveling around and the truck that it was in stopped short and it broke. But it was such a fragile piece that I had to glue the bottom to the pedestal with PC7. Do you know what PC7 is?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so now it changes. I said, Lieberman, you gotta start making a living. I started working for my mother. I still made thrown form. And I just kept making thrown pots now after this. The reason I stopped was I was seeing that it wasn't a bright future for what I wanted to do financially. The gallery needed me badly. Bob Zolla, my mother's partner, was getting a little old. So I got a good job that I'm still doing now. And I have 2 artists that exhibit at my gallery, Jay Strumman and Derek Walter. So thank you for exhibiting at Zolla Lieberman.
Yay!
Okay, so I got into porcelain, and it was about 18 inches high. I threw it. I finally learned how to throw knobs on the top of the pots. And it's about 14 feet. Okay, so I decided I wasn't happy with traditional form. So I started throwing these forms, and I couldn't throw the pots big enough. So I decided to take the pot, throw it, dry the top, turn it over, and then open up the bottom. And then you can see I would put distorted lines in. I'm going to take you through the series. It's pretty interesting. Anytime you have questions, I'll stop.
How was that fired?
About sprayed with tin oxide, burnt, raw umber, fired about cone 6 or 7 or 8.
How big is it?
It's about 16 or 17 inches tall. And I sprayed a little of red iron oxide on it to get into the pores. You see that how it's, and fired it again. I got in a lot of trouble in Northeastern, and I'll show you why in a second. They-
A little bit about the progression of photography and how it represents your photography is changed from whether it's paying somebody to do it or you're doing it yourself.
No, I
And
was-
as a gallery owner, how it makes a difference.
That's why I have slides. I had Tom Benendi shoot everything, and I got the gallery to pay for it. And he had this sweet material. You can see the gradation from the bottom to the top, and he had special lights. I really had good photography. No digital yet, and I was really. My photography gets better. Any more questions about these forms? No. Okay. I was getting interesting results. Okay, now, one day I decided, still throwing the pot, turning them over, opening up the bottom. I said I liked putting lids back on. Does everybody see the sexual connotation in that lid? Yes, it's there. Anybody have questions about this? Now, these were fired 3 or 4 times, probably cone 9 or 10. Some of them didn't make it because they cracked. But you can see how I distorted.
I have a question.
Why were they fired?
Because I wanted to see, I started lower to cone 3, and then I wasn't happy, then I would spray something.
Then you would keep on adding.
Adding. Now sometimes they crack. I have these 4 pieces in my collection. I really like this pot. It's about 18 or 19 inches tall. You can see how the bottom was inverted. And then I just wasn't strong enough like Jay and Derek to throw these big pots.
You mean like Max? We don't throw like that.
Yeah,
Max, you throw big
Max
pots
is the guy that throws the big pots.
vertically, so they're light. Vertical. Can you throw porcelain 18 or 19 inches narrow?
Give me some porcelain, I can try.
I was going to ask to see one pot you can answer. Okay. Isn't that a nice surface? You like that? No, this is 79 now. I fast forward. So here I started being a professional nude model. So here my parents take my aunt and uncle to see this group of work in the Raku section, and then they said, let's go look at the rental section. So a woman from the Figurative Art League liked my drawing. So they go in there, and there is a 6-foot drawing of William, rendered beautifully, and my aunt or uncle says, God, that guy looks familiar. You're laughing. My father didn't know what to think. So